Hello and welcome to this episode of Creating in Color. Today's topic is how ADHD affects my art. I am Natsuya Uesugi. I'm an indie mangaka and also a published science fiction writer of the Grydscaen series. And today I want to talk a little bit about ADHD and how it manifests in my stories and my art. And we're going to look here at a page from the manga I'm currently working on. This is Cal, and he is a psychic hacker who is fighting against the government. And so in the story, it's a cyberpunk story with a lot of technology in it. It's a techno thriller. And I originally created the first character, Ram, who was a hacker and an activist in the 9th grade. And the characters were psychic at that time. And I think one of the things that's happening when I was creating this series, so here you can see Fade is about to use his psychic power. He's actually having a fight with another psychic murderer. And his eyes are shining there red. And I think what was happening when I was originally creating the story is that when I was really young, they suspected that I was on the autism spectrum, because I had certain signs and things that I was doing, like stimming and masking. And I think that if I take a step back and look at this, one of the things with masking is you kind of like pretend to be neurotypical, and a lot of times because social cues, I can't read them a lot of times. They're communication issues, relationships, the interactions like that. So the hackers in the story are psychic. They can actually literally read your mind. And in certain situations, at least I have found, that I will miss social cues, and I kind of gotta like scan the environment and get there before you do, because I'm going to say something awkward, just because of the way I communicate. And a lot of neurotypical people don't really understand that. I'll say something that's like way out of the blue, or not shut up or talk too much or talk about like my special interest, which would be making manga, and writing books, and they just like, dude, you're weird. So, things like that. And so, I also have ADHD. I can get locked into something completely, there's stimming behavior, repetitive things that I do, walking on the tips of your toes, like when you're a young child. There were things that, like, not responding to your name. They actually thought I was, like, deaf for a while, because I just, wouldn't respond when somebody would call my name. And it wasn't like I couldn't hear you. It was just like I'm being overwhelmed by lights and sounds and noise and textures and all this kind of stuff. And so, like, I'm in complete sensory overload. So, I mean, I don't even care if you're talking to me, because I'm just, like, I'm gone. And so one of the things I think that I do, I can get locked into things very easily, like that hyper focus, of ADHD. And so, yeah, I can, for this episode of the manga, I literally created like 15 manga pages in, I don't know, a day, for this chapter, and I found that really interesting. I mean, I just could not release. I was, like, stuck in it, and, when I get stuck in things like that, I'm, like, on another planet, in another world, and that is, like, the only thing that's going on. And so that is one of the key things that I have found I do. And so going back to the psychics in the story, so the psychic powers in the story were actually created by radioactive fallout from a nuclear bomb. It is a post-apocalyptic story. Psychics have various powers, and they're different. And there's one of them, Blue, who doesn't talk. And Instead, they use their psychic power to do all their communication. And a lot of people find Blue a little bit abrasive, standoffish. You know, he doesn't talk, he doesn't really interact. He has strange interactions when he does deal with people. He can only handle one person at a time. You know, he gets obsessed with things. You know, he's a martial arts clandestine psychic operative for basically a government-run military group called the Psi Faction, and he's one of their best, you know, soldiers. But he, in a way, is a little childlike. He likes routine. He looks up to Galen, who's his commanding officer, but other than that, he's so awkward he doesn't really have any friends. And I think that that kind of mirrors a little bit what was going on with me in high school, because I was like totally obsessed with anime. And at that time, anime wasn't really a thing, you know, with the people in my high school. And so that was a little awkward, even in college and things like that. For example, like, you know, I would go, like, Akira was a big thing for me. You know, I would go every single day, go watch Akira like 3-4 times a day. Well, I'm supposed to be going to class. I'm so not going to class. You know, and even though I didn't go to class, so it was like terrible with attendance, you know, the subject matter that I liked, like, you know, fail out of philosophy but get, you know, straight A's in Japanese class that you're not even supposed to be taking as a freshman because it's like a junior level class, and why are you even in it? Why they even let you in it? Because, you know, I didn't even know how to follow the rules to actually, like, I don't need, get a schedule for a semester. Like, that was like the worst thing ever, trying to get your schedule together or having to change classes, you know, because second semester was different than first semester, and you got to get used to all new teachers and students and buildings, and, you know, even, you know, kind of sheltered as I was going to college, you know, that was like a complete, you know, oh my god, wow, you know, this is way too much stimulus going on and way too much change. So things like that, things like my parents say, you know, when I was young, I just do not like surprises. I still don't like surprises. I need to know exactly what's going on, where we're going, what we're doing. You know, don't just like change it up at the last minute and like do something ad hoc like right now. I can't handle that. I gotta know at any given time what, where, when, how, you know, and that. But like, you know, when I do things like my art, you know, I can go off into way left field, you know, into some space opera land or something that's just odd. And even if you look at some of my manga, you know, the interaction between the people, you know, they may have really deep feelings, you know, but I've had some readers say, you know, you're kind of removed from your emotions, or the characters are removed from their emotions. So they may be doing something that's saying, you know, they're having sensory overload or something and they're completely frustrated, but the way that it's written, I think I've had some neurodivergent people read it and they completely understand what's going on, but if you have a neurotypical person, they want you to kind of be like right in there, all up in the emotions, and that, you know, that's just not how the world looks to me. And so some people say, you know, you're a little standoffish, you know, just in my interactions with people, or I'm not going to run around and be like this social butterfly because I can't read social cues. And so that is actually reflected in some of the interactions with some of the characters, specifically, like I mentioned before, with Blue in the book, and how he's like completely socially awkward, like almost to an extreme. But the psychic powers, again, the masking, you know, of how the psychics, like there's even one power called Distiller, where you can actually get in somebody's head, understand exactly what's going on, you know, get there before them. Actually, in a way, one of the characters actually, you know, does political assassinations and actually has the target, like, do what he says he does. So if he wants you to commit suicide, then that person will commit suicide. And so, that's his distiller power as kind of a psychic political assassin. And so other things that come out, like when I'm working on my manga, like I said before, like I was able to create 15 pages of, line art in like a period of 24 hours. And that was kind of like, I don't think I've ever done that before. I think maybe 5 pages in a day, but this was, I don't know, this story just needed to come out, and so I just completely just locked in, and that was it, and there was like nothing else was going on, there was no work, oops, you forgot to eat, all these kind of things that just did not get done because we were drawing manga, and that's all we were doing, and so that happens. Things like, I get locked in a story, or, even with ADHD, things where, you're on a roll and you're doing the manuscript. I'm really good at doing the first draft, but when it comes to doing the editing, my ADHD attention just is like, nah, I can't be doing that. That's not working. Things like that are tedious. I find them boring a lot of the time. And I just can't even, like, sit still to sit down and, like, edit a page. Or even kind of, like, a lot of stopping and starting. Sometimes I can't even sit for, a half-hour anime episode because I just can't engage. I'll want to, but no matter of trying is going to get it done. I just cannot do it. And, and that's definitely an ADHD thing. But back to the masking and the psychics, I think if I look back at this, that I was actually, when I was creating the story initially, the very first character. So we're looking at Ram here on the screen. He is actually the very first character that was ever created. He is like a brilliant hacker, the highest level of elite hacker that you can possibly be. He basically was captured by the government because he hacked into Parliament and they wiped his memory. So, like, normal things like, oops, he doesn't know his name, where he came from, things like that, and he can't retain things like that, but, like, you give him some complex, hacking thing, even after, he can't tell you what he's feeling or what his name is, and he can, like, numbers and code, he is all up in it. And he's a little awkward as well when it comes to him expressing his emotions or wanting to talk. And a lot of times he likes to be alone. Some of that is, because, the government basically screwed him and experimented on him and stuff like that. But he is a lot of the times a loner. He's socially awkward, But when we started this story, we have things. This is Ram here is from the Grydscaen Scout Remnant manga, and he's also on the cover of the Grydscaen Scout novel, which was written in 2018, which is literally about a pandemic going on, and it was written before the pandemic. So if you think about it, with the lockdown in 2020, the book was released in 2020, it was written in 2018, it literally, word for word, is kind of like, what's going on now, with the virus, the quarantine, the lockdown, all that. And the book before it, Grydscaen Dark, was literally about crashing the stock market and destroying the economy, with all the hacker stuff that was going on. And so, that kind of is like, okay, well, are there really psychic powers? And, like, why did you write that book two years before it actually happened? So things like that. And it's just weird, it's like unconsciously, I think, when I was initially creating, like, the ideas for this story and drawing random, like, I still have some of the original 9th grade comic book pages that I was creating, with Ram and his original design. So his design has, the first ninth grade version of him, but he's literally the same character as he was before. So I've literally been dealing with this story for a really long time, and I kind of know it in and out. And a lot of people are like, well, how do you know all like those different facts and things about your characters? Like, you don't have an encyclopedia. Well, it's all in my head, and you ask me some random thing, I will literally pull it out of nowhere and tell you it's on page 65 in book number 5. So going back to how ADHD affects my manga, so, you know, I can be drawing manga and forget to eat, forget to sleep, be completely locked in and zooming, and literally that's what we're doing. We're not doing something else, we're not sleeping, you know, I got no time for that. You know, we are creating art, and when we get into that zone, we are completely in the zone, there's nothing around us, there's nothing else, and that is literally what we're doing. You know, and that can, so for example, I've written a full, you know, 50,000 word novel in 2 days. I wrote a whole trilogy during, you know, the November NaNoWriMo writing contest to write a novel in a month. All 3 books were literally written in, you know, 15 days, and they were full-length, you know, novels. I think, you know, I think in the end it was like one book was 60,000 words, another one was 91, and the last one was 80, and they were all written like one right after the other in 15 days. So things like that occur. I'm very obsessed with, you know, what, you know, Rom's yellow coat. It has to be a specific yellow, you know, it can't be off, it can't be different. You know, it's like things like that. It can't change. If it does change, you know, there's a whole process with that. I don't like change. I don't like surprises. And so that does come out when I'm actually creating it, you know, the manga. And if you look at the story, there are sometimes I've had readers say, you know, well, that's an awkward conversation, or just the interaction between the characters is awkward. Sometimes I've had, you know, people say just like angles of characters or how they're interacting is not neurotypical. And sometimes, but it's interesting because I've had some autistic people read my books, and I'm actually working with one counseling center that actually uses the grydscaen manga and my other graphic noise manga specifically for autistic preteens and teenagers, because it seems to resonate, and they're using it kind of as a tool to, especially with some nonverbal people who are autistic. There was at least 2 situations where someone was nonverbal for a while, and they actually read 3 of the manga and literally came back, read them over and over again over a period of 3 weeks, and literally came back to the counseling center and started talking. And they, you know, and the counselor's like, dude, what is going on here? Like, they didn't understand. And that was like, supposedly, you know, that person was able to see the story, and that specific story was about Rom, and also one of my other characters who is an artist, and I guess that kind of resonated, so I thought that was kind of awesome. So now I'm partnering with that counseling center and providing my manga, those specific books, for free, for, you know, their program, you know, for people on the autism spectrum. So I think that's great that I can participate in that. I love that. You know, and, you know, so it's just interesting that, I guess, you know, kind of as a teenager writing this story about psychics after a nuclear war, you know, being marginalized and misunderstood, and kind of, you know, subjugated by the elite government, you know, of neurotypicals, I guess, if you take a step back and look at it, that, you know, I think I was trying to understand something and actually ended up, you know, writing it into my manga without even noticing it. by creating those psychics and some of the psychic powers, you know, explaining the masking and understanding, like, how do I get inside your head, because I'm not going to read the social cues, so I got to get there before you do, so that I understand what you're saying, so that I don't, like, put my foot in my mouth and do something silly. So, yeah, so this was, I enjoyed talking about this today. If you have ADHD and you do art, how does that affect your art or some of the things you do? So thank you for letting me share, and I will talk to you later.